No? Okay. 16 is off. First. Roger, stop.
15.
Okay, the abort stage is set. Gas and engine is armed. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. This will be ignition. One liftoff. And liftoff. Roger, ignition. Boom. Switch over. 10 seconds.
The guidance,
Roger.
the onboard guidance has now taken over
baby.
control.
Go is good. We confirm auto ignition.
The grassy knoll was not a conspiracy. It was just bad luck Kennedy. And then, 1969 introduces the first of a series of unexplainable phenomena. Science was one of our only good exports, unified against the rally of a doomsday clock. May there be no greater guiding hands to human history than the pursuit of the final frontier. 3 different men, 400,000 feet on the ground, one object. That was the biggest step into the Sea of Tranquility, and it became something of an evolutionary asset. We could prove without a shadow of a doubt that we really are organizers, thinkers, makers. And how far can we go? And to where? Below the 10-cent stamp is folded, wood pulp newsprint. It welts easily in warm weather compared to that of a magazine-style laminate, and if there was ever written proof of our white-hot room, this would be it. It would be thinly curled hypotheses in a willowing farshore, family-focused and scientifically literate. There are quite a lot of things to be worried about in space. Whole systems of planets and different wavelengths of information. Species of bacteria that likely connects us to somewhere else too, and the indiscriminate predecessors that come at the cost of our probability. Nature has a stochastic side, and it's massive. Think Murphy's Law, but to the nth exponent of every key and every note being played all together at once. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to any of us, but it has patterns, and language, and models, and we can draw that. That, weirdly, came out of Kirby. That look, and it means something to the comics. When deferred to the expertise of an artist, the out of bounds changes too. Negative space becomes more about paneling. It's not about being transactional, and it isn't related to any one form of company. It's the color of it, like something that repeats endlessly. It just persists, like a focal length. And it's all specifics, all of the time. Kirby caught that. A period piece. The Colors of Cosmography. It begins with Shakman's junction to everywhere, boundless, unattached. A ruminator steering us into the nurseries of cooled fermions, assimilating between nowhere and the wonders of contemporary science. The family re-racked their brains between missions of grandeur, refelting a microwave background with half-integer spindles of worsted cloth. A slight radiation to all of it makes Marvel feel alive. Phase 1-like, and a loving affinity for 60s Americana. They are a family. Nuclear by blood and very much reliant on anecdotes to make sense of a faster story. The Fantastic Four are a unique system, Quark-like in their correspondence with spacetime. Charming, strange, finding every which a way to bond to their world frontwards and backwards, up and down. Their family is a beautiful pairing, but in actuality, it serves as one of the many occupational hazards. Show me a better billboard of our race through a monster's eyes. Speaking of, all 4 are a reminder of God's prototype, but very much of some intrepid design that speaks to our curious, ceaseless hunger for knowledge. The Fantastic Four are a precocious, solitary group, laid on thick even for my tastes in the Silver Age, yet at a much smaller scale they're still remarkably perennial. They can wrestle down with titans of nature but be squashed like bugs on the windshield, yet continuously and lovingly they commit to spewing their enriched guts across a fiery mix of intellects and remain unafraid of new dimensions for over 60 years. Fundamental to the nature of all things mentioned, I like the oddities of characters when we find them in distress. I like when actors and ideas have to meet each other in the middle, or when one starts to leak into the other. It's a quick look through the director's eyes and subsequently becomes my only real critique of Shakman's Fantastic Four. When considering the totality of Pedro Pascal's choices as Reed Richards and Joseph Quinn's sometimes stiff undercurrent as Johnny Storm, all I walk away with is that I wanted more. The question remains as to where the vision was going for these choices, and not so much the why with regards to the intent. Great actors can give great performances, but they're very much at the whims of the studio's constraints and the director's direction. And I feel that I've seen these personalities explored in other ways, when in all honesty, they deserved whatever depth was eventually cut out. Consider the personality types of these four characters in conjunction with the final cut. Does it not feel like we merely found residuals of what could be better versions of these characters if they were afforded the freedom to act on it? Why not show us more of that creative decisiveness that turned WandaVision into an early pandemic classic, instead of drip-feeding it to most of us who have been here since 2008? Reed is a compulsion that spirals, and Johnny is emblematic of exploring contemporary masculinity. These characters are unique because they are unlike others. Their celestial counterparts refine the focus of a world you'd see in wizarding tents because math can only take us so far. The Fantastic Four are inspired by all things asymmetrical and superpositioned, where color has a life of its own and shapes are created from angular lines and thick strokes. There is nothing timid about them, and neither should be their characterizations. I am still fascinated about the echoes of Kirby Spacetime, and I keep my copy of number 49 behind hard plastic still.
What do your characters represent?
Well, the characters represent a sort of a transcendent feeling that we all have inside us, that we could do better. We want to do better. We haven't time to do better. That we can be the people that we lionize.
Romanticizing cosmology relies a lot on instinct and that of shorthand, and it's weird. Kirby cared about it. He squeegeed out tea leaves from a Ouija board most metaphysical, and he colored them in like a maniac. His constellations were sharp, reading out loud to four persons of equal measure who would consider each juncture of known genesis like an impressionist, first by getting their facts straight, and then distorting them to their leisure. The space itself, however, was purled into little dots. Verticality was a portion of his compass, so he gave it some mass and the face of someone we'd recognize. Completely organized in spite of every bit of chaos and the culmination of every form of emergent iotas. Galactus. Gallon, for short. The original predecessor, complexion of a sixth cosmos and what remains, he represents Kirby's affinity for tracing the curvature of gravity like an exit ramp on a highway. If there is a Mount Rushmore for comic creators, then Kirby deserves his own blind eternity within it. And it wasn't because he pushed the envelope ahead or cultivated a style so seamlessly. Think existential. What are the limits of this probability space-time, and can you split it open like a kaleidoscope? Kirby's mind for binding binary and quantum mechanics has lasted generations, and the molding of the Sixth Sense became Marvel's clay commandments. Before primordial giants and luxurious laminations was a science fiction liaison trying to make ends meet. He found his way to bigger landscapes beyond what we considered, with his footsteps on the frontier, between so many dusts of starlight. Before we agree to disagree and I give my piece on the truly outstanding parts of a new attempt at the Fantastic Four, I felt this experience left me perplexed. Both completely satisfied and yet earnestly convinced that something better was left behind, and a nagging frustration of knowing how good it could have been. So much promise and so much taken to task, but it just couldn't let itself be, and trust in the drama for drama's sake. 2-hour mandates for superhero films are a result of corporate greed, and it's affecting everything. At its most consequential, leaving nutrient-rich fat off of Marvel's most auspicious course squandered an otherwise perfectly seasoned seer. For what? I'm not sure. Fantastic Four is one of the strongest 4-star movies Marvel has made in a while, but only if for a sense of spine and nothing else should Reed and Sue's connective tissue have been left in. Little extensions of existing scenes or auxiliary anecdotes are a victory lap to good character work, and that was cut. And it's clear, because the missing 20% is what feels most missing. Maturity requires dirty work, and characters deserve dimensions, much more than hurrying the plot along or being too afraid to tell the whole picture. I feel even on rewatch that the intensity of certain scenes is still missing, where at times the world is so pure in its aesthetic that it forgets about the shadowing, the inking, never giving itself the legroom to get messy or the confidence to play with ideas because, simply, why not? Fantastic Four, more aggressively than Thunderbolts, sold me on the idea that Marvel can still spare no expense when it wants to, and yet its shortcomings are still entirely self-inflicted. This is not a comparison on production quality, but it is an alarm of standards in decline. Fantastic Four took a classic approach to creative revival, and for 90% of it, it works. It rebuilds the vision of Phase 1 through architecture and set design with the escapism of Phases 2 and 3, where all parts, hit or miss, were firing on all cylinders. Getting back to that original formula has felt more strenuous a task than it should, and as the interstellar chase began, I thought for a moment that fearlessness was back. But then the third act starts to unfold, and the movie just kind of ends. The editing that removes excess story, that removes excess world building. Marvel used to be really good at knowing when to go the extra mile. Now it's like they're too afraid to say yes to anything too daring or self-assured. Fantastic Four, and maybe my biggest critique, is that it got all of the pieces right, but it was too afraid to go the distance on some of its best ideas. It's not frustration with what was, but the inability to let go of what it could be. There is potential here, within everything that Fantastic Four is, and everything that it's not. And at least that's a road worth traveling into Doomsday. The Fantastic Four comb the universe for idiosyncrasies. Across 12 pages of relentless Kirbyisms lies an uncompromised echo of ego in sketch. It's the anthropic principle brought to life, and the entanglement of many artists, writers, and ideators when reminiscing on some faraway, time-dilated abyss after abyss, more blissful than it is repetitive. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance because he didn't like the implications of it, but Reed can't help himself. He has to acknowledge it. Our labors in cogitation are only as limited as what wonder allows, for we are explorers at heart and scientists by nature. Can a Fantastic Four translate that? To serve as the reporters for the universe as they understand it, to make clear that which is, in coordination with all laws of thermodynamics and observation. Give me a lever and a place on which to stand and everything will move, I promise you. That is where Reed is born, and while it's not an exact quote, it is an unspecified modus operandi of this film's story, and a relatively safe way of manifesting the family's mission statement. It is where the Fantastic Four cease to be biology and instead become physics. Accretion disks uproot the very definition of a time jump, and this future derivative of Marvel's first family is like a light bulb in the dark, for the most part. If you want to build a new core of resourceful Marvel stories for the Multiverse Saga for your audiences to get invested in, and care about, and theorize about, and so on, the answers may lie here, in this world, in this version of Earth, and with this first family. Right of first refusal rarely pulls rank, but I'd argue that this would be the time for it, where the Infinity Saga would circle 6 Avengers to start, and then more. Future phases might require more than two-dimensional outlines, with limitless possibilities superseding priority in favor of lucrative box office. What does that mean? That the real creases of the cosmos are where the Tolkien-like lore will bury itself within Marvel, within the Fantastic Four, where old protons wrinkle over the fabrics of elder gods and the like. I care about this Fantastic Four because I care about what they might mean, and I care about this relationship because without it, there is no wonder left, no existentialism. Fantastic Four are to cosmic Marvel what innovation was to industrial light and magic, unifying different arms of the space race into something faceless, infinite, and positively and then some, or rendered incomprehensible in something as large as Galactus. It is important to say that there is some gorgeous cinematography on display here. The Z-axis in Fantastic Four engages a sense of wonder and momentum that is easily some of Marvel's best, and a highlight of the last few years of VFX improvements in Marvel movies. Because it's so good, I genuinely can't help but love 90% of this package alone, even with the story's missteps. The tracking of Shalabal between a skyline and a wormhole into an event horizon that stretches physics is absolutely insane. Seeing Galactus felt like seeing the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, or Thanos introducing himself to the Asgardians. Galactus moves like a spaceship. He's like a constellation in the sky and blends in with the set design in some really unique ways. There were vibes of Alien, 2001, Terminator. The second part of the first act of this movie is a love letter to some of the best sci-fi existential horror ever made, and that's where it felt like the confidence was flowing for Shakman. The Thing is the best example of Marvel sparing no expense in the post-COVID reboot, and just as easily blew my mind in the many ways that Thanos did in 2018. The willingness to get uncomfortable in your visuals, your story, your characters, your actions is how Guardians 3 itself was pulled into a different tier of Marvel movies, and it's what almost propelled Fantastic Four into a similar conversation. The story takes good ideas to the finish line, using Silver Surfer as the fulcrum for big choices and positioning Galactus and Franklin as one side of this moral lever. It's all really good. I just find myself more curious about how good it could have been if the film trusted itself to go deeper in those instances. Boring or exciting or B-roll or anything in between, you don't need to rush your audience through your best scenes and best ideas, because otherwise, what's the point of being invested? Trust us when we say we want characters who are rough around the edges or unlikable in some aspects. It's what makes them characters in the first place, what makes your cinematic universe live longer. Example, when Galactus is finally brought into the fold during Sue's pregnancy, her unshakable confidence in the future of her family dynamic is questioned. Her worldview is challenged, and it's because of Reed that this reality is turned on its head. Why not explore that more? That middle arc for this family is so vital. The points where debate and theory and agony are explored as they search for a solution and battle through their intellectual attritions. That's what was missing. The rock holding it all together, of course, is Ben Grimm, and his charisma is as infectious as it is marketable. I love how complete the Thing looks and sounds and feels. I love the parts of the movie where Johnny and Ben really have good chemistry. Though this version of Johnny is still a bit more narrow than that of his braggadocious comic counterpart, narrow doesn't mean shallow, and it certainly doesn't mean misunderstood. I just wanted more to chew on from everybody. There could have been an extended 15, 20, 30 minutes worth of scenes around Johnny and Ben and Reed in their own arcs that would have done wonders for the foundation of this movie, and given more credence to the performance of Eben Moss-Bachrach as a gentle, level-headed, perceptive take on the Thing. Shakman's Fantastic Four is varying degrees magnificent, dynamic, and all the while holistically compromised by subpar editing and a repurposed spine. This movie was genuinely 3 or 4 creative decisions away from being generational, and though some of the editing choices are directly responsible for these missteps, it doesn't change the strength of what works, nor how good it looks doing it. Where Superman's flaws felt charming because of an aspiring ideal, Fantastic Four's flaws feel more inexcusable than anything else, and they are entirely self-inflicted. How monumental of a milestone is it in monster movie cinema to see one of the most iconic villains ever in an environment predated by Godzilla -1, and still to be left with room for spectacle in the third act? How wonderful of an anchor is it to use the depth of Reed's aloof, spiraling, self-aggrandizing, conflict-creating obsessive personality disorder as an Archimedes wedge, but only shaving off pieces of it at a time. These effects, these relationships, they deserve more than a runway confined to just 2 hours. Getting Galactus right was never about him being too unrealistic, and limiting our range with Reed Richards and Johnny Storm was entirely a move against their better interests. The ideas themselves are good, really good, but the angle in which Shakman dissects some of these ideas could have been deeper and greater and better, if nothing else than to match the passion of the world he built to support it. It sometimes lacked the intensity found in nearly all of the second act, and that's a shame, because what's here even still is passionate and beautifully made. Show me a world based on your ideas and your people, and let me decide on my own if it has merit. For some of this, it does. For a lot of this, I see the vision. But the percentages that are missing are missed indeed. It's evident. But that is where my frustrations end, because as much as I am an advocate for better editing in our blockbusters, I can't help but feel inspired about the potential that does remain. It is a checkpoint in where Marvel are along the return to glory, and twice as such, where this movie somehow shines brighter than any other since Guardians 3. Because when the Fantastic Four has the confidence to lean into itself, in the first act, the second, and the third, that shit draws you in like Phase 3 all over again. There's honestly a lot of things I could be saying about Fantastic Four, whether talking more specifically about what worked or what didn't, but I just walk away even now, still wondering about the promise of what this could do in the future. Because there's promise here, and a lot to write about. And for the Fantastic Four, outer space becomes a whole new kind of home. It is their space race ridden in perpetuity, driven spiritually, and responsible for so much of what's at stake for Doomsday and Secret Wars. I just hope we get to see all of it, uncompromised, unflinching, and then some. Let them lead, and the rest will be remembered better than you would expect, Marvel. Trust in your first family. And as always, thanks for watching.